Okay, a second good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Disability and Inclusion Forum on Monday, March the 10th, 2025. My name is Lisa Hughes and I will be chairing this meeting. The meeting is being held in person, via Zoom and streamed live to the public on YouTube. I remind all attendees that participation in the meeting indicates consent to the audio and visual being streamed live and acknowledgement that after the meeting it will continue to be available in the public domain. We are not expecting the fire alarm to sound this morning. However, if it does, please may I ask that you leave in an orderly fashion and rendezvous across the road outside the library next to the fountain. Firstly, it would be useful for forum members and officers to introduce themselves so that the public are aware of who is in this meeting and the role that you are undertaking. So my name is Lisa Hughes. I'm a Maidenhead resident with disabilities, also a trustee at Talkback and director at Brawick Plant Nurseries.
My name's Councillor Helen Price, and I'm a member of this forum.
I'm Councillor Catherine Del Campo and a member of this forum.
I'm Peter Haley. I'm the Chief Exec of People to Places Local Community Transport Organisation.
Dominic Manley, Maidenhead resident, wheelchair user, service user, and also a volunteer on the local MS Society group.
Lizzie Jones, I'm a member of this forum and I'm both a service user and a carer.
I'm Sharon Carrigan and I'm the family advisor at Manor Green Special School.
Good morning, my name is Victoria Holt. I'm the Community and Development Manager for Optilis, adult social care provider for Windsor and Maidenhead.
Good morning, my name's Simon Arthur. I'm here representing IT Services and Digital Services, Council Officer.
Good morning, I'm Neil Walter. I'm the Parking and Enforcement Manager for the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead.
Good morning, I'm Ellen McManus-Fry, Qualities and Community Engagement Officer.
Mikey Lloyd, Democratic Service Officer and Clerk to the Forum.
And if I could invite the people online to introduce themselves. So Alex Tilley.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Alex Tilley. I'm from NHS Frimley and I'm the Associate Director for Primary Care Services. Thank you for my invitation.
Archie White.
Hi, I'm Archie White. And I work for Orelli Development. I've also got Tom Forrester here.
Oh yeah, Tom Forrester, Development Director at Orelli.
Thank you. Sean Lyons.
Yes, morning all. So Sean Lyons from Exterior Architecture. I'm landscape architect supporting Orelli on the Nicholson Quarter work.
Thank you. Carl Patton. Carl Patton, we're not hearing you. Greg.
Hello, my name is Greg Froggatt. I'm with Vacuum Architects and we're supporting Orelli on the parking aspects of the Nicholson Quarter.
We had trouble hearing you, but I think you said you're associated with the Orelli and Nicholson redevelopment item. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Sorry, IT issues.
And then lastly, is it Tim? Tony. Yes, sorry, Tony, please.
Yep, good morning everyone. I'm Tony Wares. I'm Associate Director of Velocity Transport Planning. I'm here just in relation to the proposal at Sierra House at Mary's Walk in the centre of Maidenhead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have a single apology from Sharon Bunce this morning.
And I also was notified that Robin Pemberton may be late in joining the meeting. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest that need to be made? No, I'm not seeing any. So item 4, the minutes from the last forum. Does anyone have any comments or amendments? Councillor Price?
It's not an amendment, it's just progress. We talked about the Equality Forum and I just wondered, has it progressed since we last spoke?
No, there hasn't been any progress on it at the moment. We're looking at kind of maybe a different way of doing something kind of based on the feedback about it might not be the most productive way of taking the idea.
Thank you. Councillor Price, could you do it? Are there any other questions or amendments from the minutes, or can I sign these as being accurate and full? Yeah, I'm seeing 2 nods, so I'm signing those. So, just a few updates and comments from me. So, Health Watch WAM, who are the independent voice for people who use health and social care services in RBWM, and their remit is to ensure that those running health and care services locally understand the needs, experiences and concerns of people who use those services and to speak out on their behalf. Health Watch WAM have a very short live survey and we can share the link with any forum members who have not already received it via Steve Sanson from Age UK Berkshire, who has shared it. Also, RBWM, Slough and Bracknell Forest are about to re-tender the provision of Health Watch services in the sort of combined local authority areas. We were invited as Disability and Inclusion Forum members to have somebody participate in the early stages of the engagement process, and thank you to Lizzie Jones for volunteering to do that later this week. It was great news to read about the increased bus provision and particularly those services between the towns and our hospitals. However, where I live in Firs Platt, the lack of dropped curbs across busy roads, which has been flagged for 5 years, will continue to hamper access to bus stops and therefore bus journeys for people with disabilities. I was recently contacted by the local macular degeneration group. This vision impairment affects about 700,000 people in the UK. It increases with age and around 1 in 8 people aged 80 or over are affected. The local group feel that the needs of visually impaired and blind residents are ignored or misunderstood. They're going to liaise with another charity, Berkshire Vision, about their ongoing participation with the Disability and Inclusion Forum. And I think their insight, no pun intended, would be really valuable. I know how much I have learned from the lived experience of vision impaired and blind colleagues on the GWR accessibility panel. Interestingly, the macular degeneration group gave some feedback on one of the presentations in the agenda. On taxis, I recently became aware that local taxi and private hire firms were quoting higher fares for wheelchair using passengers than for other passengers. And I forwarded this information to Greg Nelson, who is the RBWM officer for trading standards and licensing. Forum members may not be aware of the Taxis and Private Hire Vehicle Disabled Persons Act 2022. It amended the Equality Act 2010 to place duties on taxi drivers, private hire vehicle drivers and operators. So any disabled person has specific rights and protections to be transported and to receive assistance when using a taxi or private hire vehicle without being charged extra. Just a couple of consultations to bring to your attention. There is the Berkshire Local Nature Recovery Strategy, which is open until the 24th of March, and the Eton Wick Library consultation, which runs until the 6th of April. So that is all my update. Next item on the agenda is local primary and secondary care, and we have Alex Tilley from the Frimley Integrated Care Board. So I sent out, well, as part of the agenda, we've had a bit of a sort of briefing note about what concerns people had, and I'm grateful to Alex for coming to the forum and talking about these issues. Thank you, Alex.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you a little bit more about primary care services in our area. There were a couple of questions that were raised, of which I'm happy to sort of put some information to, but also we're happy to take questions. I'm really sorry, I'm not familiar with Zoom. It's not a platform we use, so maybe I could send the slides around that I prepared afterwards, if that would be helpful to people. So to start off with, I think it's really important to have an opportunity just to say that general practice services are continuing to modernise, both in Frimley and across the country. Some of these changes are challenging both to our practices, but also to our population. But the evidence suggests that this is the right model to address. These models include things like better access, so increasing the routes of access into general practice. This does a couple of things. One is it ensures that we get our patients to the right professional as soon as possible, and that requires information up front. So also an important factor into getting the right care to the right people is providing the right information and allowing people to do that in a positive way. The other thing is obviously one of the questions today is around our capacity in our existing premises, and we continue to look to try and resolve that. So in order to address that, we have the digital access route and the improved digital telephony access routes as well. So there are a number of things that we're trying to do to improve experience and access to our general practice services. Alongside that, we have our dental services that we've increased the capacity within, and also we have our community pharmacy services, which have also increased into a service called Pharmacy First, where they can see many more conditions in the community without having to make an appointment with your GP or to seek alternative services. So the service has expanded. We continue to review and work with our providers on what that service might look like. We are really keen to ensure that all of our patients, no matter what their needs are, get an access route that works for them. So in order to do that, we have three main access routes. One is to access your physical surgery from a medical perspective, and also to access your pharmacy directly as well. We also have the digital routes, which is through either 111 for pharmacy and dental, or directly into your online consulting tool, which will be based on the digital platform, the website that the practice use for medical. And also we've invested significantly into the telephony offer as well into general practice by ensuring that every practice now in Maidenhead, Ascot and Windsor and beyond have a digital offer whereby patients can decide how they are contacted following their approach. So you could have a call back, or you could phone back yourself, or you could leave a message, etc. So the idea is that those three routes are all equitably managed in order to, so no matter which entrance you come into, that you get the same experience and same outcome and same service. These are all ambitions, and we're continuing that journey to do that. The other thing to kind of introduce also is that we're really focused on ensuring that we get the right care to those that most need it. So in order to do that, it's important that we have a lot of information to make those decisions. One way of doing that is having clinicians in that pathway that are looking at medical records to see what their existing needs are, but also working with our patients to understand what their immediate need is. So what is it today that they're contacting us for? So all of that tied in, as well as expanding our roles in our general practice teams, that describes the modern general practice model that we are adopting in Frimley. The other bit that we also want to start to work on is how we engage better with our population to continue to improve these services. We recently did a stakeholder engagement program, of which we're now pulling out the themes for that, and then we want to come and engage better. So I'm really hopeful that you'll allow me to come back in a couple of months' time and do a bit more of that engagement on all of our primary care services as part of that programme of work. And the ambition is that we would have a primary care strategy by the autumn of this year, and with the Darcy report stipulating our shifts from analogue to digital and our treatment to prevention and our hospital services to community as our three big shifts over the coming years, then I think it's an important time now to listen more and make sure we've got our direction of travel right. So just going on to the questions that the committee the forum have supplied. I don't know if I've got them word for word, Chair, so apologies if I haven't got them word for word, but let me take the themes. So there's some questions in relation to the Maidenhead Town Centre capacity in general practice services, specifically following the new developments and the increased housing stock. As hopefully most of you will know, we work really closely with the local authority and had previously worked up an option in order to expand our capacity in the town centre. For various reasons, this hasn't gone ahead, and therefore we are looking for solutions as to how we might build that capacity in an alternative way. So I'm really keen to hear if there are ideas from the forum as to how we might address that. Having said that, our 4 general practices that we would cite as being town centre have done their best and are meeting the needs of the growing population. But we would much prefer to have a more modern estate stock to both ensure we recruit and retain our best workforce, and also that we provide the extended scope of services that general practice are continually building for the best of their population. From a ICB perspective, we don't hold investment capital funds, but we do have access to bid for such things from the government, such as from the Department of Health and Social Care. When these opportunities arise, we do make strong representation, and we have had some success in the Royal Borough around the new health centre at Brookhouse in Heatherwood, and also we have a strong pipeline of capital schemes, including our community hospital settings. So such for Royal Borough, that is King Edward and St Mark's. We continue to want to work together. We recognise we haven't got a solution today for the increased population. We would also continue our discussions with the local authority in relation to any support we can gain from local infrastructure levies that developers put into the local authority to help with all public services in the area. I'm really happy to, I don't know if you want to stop on that question and take any questions from the forum as the primary care question that I had submitted to me.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, we will pause at that point and take questions. I see Councillor Price has her hand raised.
Thank you. It's about the primary care that you mentioned as the 3 points that people can access, which is you can do it through the pharmacists themselves, you can do it through the telephone, and then physical access to the GP surgery. And that's fine for people who are listening here, and that's fine for people who are really au fait with digital, but there's a whole raft of individuals and possibly our older population who we know are not digitally aware and therefore won't be aware of this change. So trying to sort of walk in their footsteps, assuming most actually will have prescriptions of some sort and therefore will get prescriptions and will get these prescriptions, either they go and collect if they can or they're delivered. Is there any way in the prescription bag of having this information so they can read that actually you can go to the pharmacist for help, you can phone this number for help, and actually with the change in the bus services, because I fought really hard in my area in West Windsor, because we only have one GP and increased housing, is that now there's a bus service that will take people to the GP, because I was afraid that would be taken away, and the fact that the bus service is now linked with all the hospitals. Is there any way that we could use the fact that people collect their prescriptions to give them that information? Can the bags have that information in them, on them? I just don't know how else we're going to communicate this to residents.
That's a really helpful suggestion. We do put things like seasonal vaccination information and things like that through pharmacy collection bags and others. So certainly something we can look to do in relation to promoting how people can access services for the best of their needs. So yeah, really keen to speak to our pharmacy colleagues about whether or not that's something that they'd be able to help us with. Does that answer your question? Yes, I'm absolutely up for making sure we communicate the right pathways.
Looked at as a possible route to communicate. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Del Campo.
Sorry, from Chair there. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alex. You mentioned King Edward and St Mark's, and if I understood correctly, there's potentially some funding coming through to do more there. Are you able to elaborate on that?
Well, this is the estates pipeline, so we've identified them as need. We have got some plans for the internal reworking of King Edward to maximise the clinical space there. It's a fairly old building, so we are still working through that. And St Mark's, we are working with NHS Property Services to see what the opportunity is there to maximise that site. Obviously, there's some old antiquated estates there, but also some really usable space. So they are in the pipeline, so they are flagged for opportunities. We haven't yet secured capital for that. So it's reassuring that hopefully that they are on the list for there's an opportunity on both sites to do better.
Thanks. Just to follow up, when we talk about opportunities, that is to expand and develop services there. Rather than a different kind of opportunity. Obviously, St Mark's came up in the local plan discussions as, a potential site for housing. So I just want to confirm that, we're looking at clinical uses for the site.
We continue to look at the clinical services based on the needs of the population. Yes, definitely.
Fantastic, thanks.
Angela?
Yes, going back to the redevelopment of Maidenhead, with the number of flats under construction and the ones that have already been completed, I mean, we're looking at approximately, and this is an approximate figure, between 2,000 and 3,000 extra people in the population of the central area of Maidenhead. And in that central area, there are 2 GP surgeries. I mean, this is a huge amount of people. So how soon, time-wise, will you be developing extra capacity for this extra population?
Thank you. So we do get the housing growth information, and we do put that into our estates plans and pipelines to predict what that service need is. We're very keen to find a solution to this, as you're referring to the 2 town centre practices at Wilderness have accepted patients and continue to accept patients, and are building that list as the population grows. We also consider a couple of other sites. So we've got one on Cornwallis and one in Rosemead as well, which is Raymill. So there are 4 sites in the town centre, but recognising what you're saying about the location specifically at the back of the high street. The plan is dependent on availability of a place to develop something further. So we continue to have those conversations, both with developers and the local authority. One of the other areas we've looked at in relation to condition and capacity in our premises is also west of the town. So looking at the possibility of the golf course development as well. We've got practices there that are small and wouldn't be able to expand in the way that the town centre ones have been able to accommodate it. So I guess just to say that the town centre is not our only concern.
Thanks, Alex. I have a couple of questions as well. And firstly, to say, yes, we'd love you to come back to the June forum and talk about the stakeholder engagement. My question is about, is there a timetable for the rollout of telephony and digital services with the GPs? I speak as someone whose practice has yet to roll out such services, and it does cause a crunch in trying to get access to primary care information.
Thank you. So I'm very happy to hear feedback on our practices, and I'm really happy to pick up that particular experience as well outside of the forum. So yes, the digital and the digital, as in the web-based one and the telephony one, have been available for a couple of years now. So it's been optional improvement to services, and obviously it came in really as essential in relation to when we were in the pandemic scenario for patients to get access to care. So it has been available for a little while. We have got variation in the rate of uptake. We have just had from NHS England the general practice contract for 25-26, and from October 25, all practices must have that digital offer. So we haven't, we've continued to work to improve that anyway without that, but there is now a requirement by October 25. So that's published on the NHS England website if people want to get a bit more information. But again, equally happy to bring that back a little bit more next time if that's helpful.
No, that's really good to hear that there is a deadline. And then the other question was again about the ICB bidding for capital investment. So a few years ago, there were discussions around a community, I think it was community health hub in Reform Road, and I wondered whether something similar to that was on your kind of in your pipeline to bid for capital investment.
We still stand by the model of its integrated integrated care hubs, I think is what that program was called. We still stand by that. Integration is really important. So to build new buildings that can integrate services that are tailored to the local population needs is really critical. Just keeping extending existing buildings or trying to reimagine, that will only get us so far, and therefore a new development would be something we would be interested in.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions on the primary care? We did have a question around secondary care as well, Alex. I don't know if you can speak to that, please.
Thank you. So two questions from the secondary care perspective. So I have done some work with some colleagues on these, so hopefully this is helpful. The first one was in relation to the community diagnostics currently being developed in the Upton Hospital, which is located in Slough. And the question was around whether there will be a community diagnostic centre in Maidenhead. So a bit like estates, we have to bid for these programs of work, and we have been really successful across the Frimley footprint to be able to get £25 million worth of capital investment to improve our diagnostic capacity, based on population health needs that and opportunity in relation to NHS estates. The Upton Hospital was selected as the north site. There has been increased capacity across Frimley Health Foundation Trust footprint, both at Heatherwood and at St Mark's. But at the moment, there is no plans for further national investment in expanding that community diagnostic centre, and therefore it's unlikely we'll be able to extend the programme any further, either to St Mark's or to other sites that aren't already in that plan. That's not to say that the diagnostics already available at the services at St Mark's around acute outpatients, our frailty wards and haematology, etc. They're absolutely the services that have gained to a degree around that programme of work around the Community Diagnostic Centre. And then the second question we had was around the non-emergency patient transport service. So you're all aware, hopefully, that there is a new service starting in April, that the provider is EMED. They're a well-known, well-trusted provider. They operate across the country. Some of you may or may not know them. They will be covering both the Frimley, Berkshire, Oxford and Bucks area, because I know obviously from a Royal Borough perspective, you neighbour a couple of different geographies, and there will be some additional sites as well as the existing ones in covering our hospital sites. So we've got Slough, Farnborough and Wexham Park and Frimley Park, in addition to those that are already in the current service. The question you had was around some of the standards within the current service. I have asked the procurement and contracts team around the access criteria for the new service. My understanding is that this is going to be maintained with some strong key performance indicators to ensure that as transition into the new service, that these will be adhered to, and we look forward to having a new provider and that service to be aligned to what's being commissioned. I'm afraid I haven't got those access criteria to hand for today's meeting, but I hope there are people in the room that have been involved also in this, but happy to take any questions. I may or may not be able to answer them, but I'm really happy to take them.
Thanks. Thanks very much for the clarifications on both of those. I know that the user experience that's kind of recorded on I think places like Trustpilot for EMED aren't particularly great. So I think there's some trepidation about how well the service is going to meet the needs of people having to get to non-emergency hospital appointments or treatments. Do I have any questions? Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Not so much a question, but more of a statement, really. It was reported by the BBC News, both on BBC News South and on BBC Radio Berkshire last week, that EMED were struggling quite a lot. They had failed on 21 of 27 key performance indicators for the Surrey area, I believe. They are taking over the Frimley and Berkshire, Oxfordshire and Bucks area on the 1st of April, but also they take over Sussex as well. So they're taking on a huge chunk of activity all on the same day. And I think with their track record, as found by the BBC, that there was a lot of concerns expressed about that. And that was, I think it was Thursday it was publicised.
Thank you, Peter. Alex, I don't know if you have any kind of comments around that.
I don't, I'm afraid, but it's certainly something that I'll highlight to the team if they're not already aware. But Peter, I'd hope that they would be aware of the numerous contracts that providers taken on, and they've got suitable assurances that the transition will be a good transition. But thank you for the reference to the press last week. I'll check the team have got that.
Thanks very much. Are there any other questions for Alex before we thank her and let her go? No, I'm not seeing anything. So thank you, Alex. That was really helpful. And I hope you'll be able to join us again. I don't know if she's left already. Join us again in...
I'm still here.
Oh, okay, you just disappeared from my screen. So no, thank you very much for coming, and yeah, we hope you can come along in June. You're very welcome to stay, but I'm sure you have other pressing things, so we won't expect you to do so. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
So the next item on the agenda was going to be the accessibility of Maidenhead Community Centre. And I was contacted recently by Maidenhead Citizens Advice East Berkshire with some concerns over access for people with disabilities to their office location on the first floor at Maidenhead Community Centre. But it doesn't look like Bill Feeney, their interim CEO, is either on the call, and he's definitely not in the room. So we will skip that item and move on to the Nicholson redevelopment. So this is receiving an update from Dan, I'm not sure Dan, but Archie and other colleagues. So Archie, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Lisa. Do you mind if we share a document?
Absolutely, please go ahead.
Hello.
Thanks, yeah, we can see that.
That all clear? Okay. So Archie here. I'm Tom Forrester. I met some of you at our exhibition a couple of weeks ago, so it's good to see you again. Also, I think Will Robinson, who I think some of you have also met before, sends his apologies. He's at the office all day today, so he would like to have been here, but he unfortunately can't make it. What I thought we would do, so we've got a short presentation. In terms of the running on, I thought I'd provide a very, very quick background on what we've been doing in the past sort of 6 years since we bought the project.
Just to cut in, we're finding it a bit difficult to hear you.
Okay. I'll move up with the laptop. Is that better at all?
Yes, it is. Thanks.
Is that better? Sorry, trying to get us both on the screen. Sorry, actually. Yes. So yeah, I'll provide a very quick background as to what we've been up to for the last 6 years. We have Carl from JTP who will run through some of the sort of key changes to the master plan over the last few months that we've been working on. We've got Greg from Fatkin. So Dan can't make it, but Greg's one of the architects at Fatkin who will talk you through the proposal with regards to the multi-storey car park. We've also got a couple of slides on general accessibility around the public realm. And we've got our landscape architect, exterior architecture on here to talk you through those slides. So that's kind of and obviously feel free to jump in if you like it as we go through the slides. That's absolutely fine.
We're still struggling with volume here, so I don't know if there's a way you can.
Maybe actually if you change it to the laptop, maybe that will work. Let me try again. Is that any better? What's happened there, actually?
I think you're going to have to sit close to your screen if that's where the microphone is.
Yeah, that's fine. Maybe I may put the video off if I get too close. How is that better?
Yes.
Is that better? Okay. Just let me know if you I'll speak up as well. So let's go to the next. So some of you may have seen this slide at the exhibition recently, but I thought it should be helpful. I'm sure lots of you are already aware, but it'd be helpful to explain what we've been up to for the sort of since we bought the site. So we bought the site originally in March 2019. Spent a couple of years getting the first planning application consented, and that was consented by March 2021. Then obviously we've had lots of macroeconomic and political challenges we've been facing over that time. So I won't go into those in detail, but you can kind of see some of them on the screen there in red, which have kind of been pushing against us on this project. So after 21, we then embarked on a CPO process to tidy up some of the rights and other things on the site, which we finally got confirmed in November 23, November 23. Clearly between March 2019 and November 23, a lot of things in the world had changed. And therefore we then embarked on a sort of a redesign process to ensure that the scheme was market facing and responded to building regulation updates particularly regarding fire regulations and second fire cause. We made the scheme more simple. We simplified it to ensure that each block could be delivered individually. So we removed things like basements to just improve I think we're all pushing for this to be delivered. So that they were the sort of drivers behind, excuse me, a bit of a sore throat, so I do apologise. They're drivers behind making some of the key changes. And we've got to a point now with the design where we are in a position to submit the application towards the end of April. So we've got a couple of months to go. So we're just making some final design tweaks. We've had about 7 pre-application meetings with the local authority now, which have all gone really well. So we do have a supportive authority, which is really helpful. And yeah, so the plan is to submit in April, and then fingers crossed, get things moving in the early part of next year. That's what the team are pushing for, and that's what we're really excited to finally say that with confidence. And that's it from me really in terms of the background. I'll pass on to Carl, who can explain some of those sort of master plan changes that I just mentioned in terms of responding to the market and other simplification measures.
Thanks, Tom. Apologies for missing the introductions at the start. As part of the architecture team, we've been kind of trying to develop the master plan to retain the main principles of the master plan framework, which you'll see on your screen with the consented scheme. We've worked pretty hard with a collaborative process through that kind of 5-year period, through the pandemic and beyond, to develop a framework that suited kind of the master plan as it sits. One of the key things that we've kind of shifted is towards a more residential focused master plan, converting one of the office plots into residential parcel. We did a bit of tweaking in terms of the road orientation and connections through the site. So now we have Moffat Street, which is our new connection running east-west off of King Street, directly connecting into Albert Street and the bus stops on Frascati Way, providing a more direct kind of approach into the town centre. The new bus stops, which are on Broadway, again provide a more direct access for up Desborough Way towards the central square and the High Street. We've sought to increase the amount of public realm provided to bring some greenery further into the town centre. You'll note that there's a lot more greenery along King Street, allowing some more breakout spaces with seating along those routes. And also secondary transitional squares such as that in Moffat Square, right in the centre of the site, which provides a bit more kind of a landscaped zone as opposed to the kind of flexible use St Nicholas Winton Square directly at the centre. We sought to resolve some of the convoluted access arrangements into the multi-storey car park. An original consent had a series of basements with multiple access points into the various parcels off of Broadway, which I think we felt could have caused some confusion in terms of knowing which access points were suitable for who. So we've rationalised that, providing a single point of access into that multi-storey car park building. Go on to the next page. This is currently where the master plan sits. So, I mean, as I said, the framework as a principle is broadly following the principles established through that consultation process first time around. These north, south, east, west connections providing a lot more connectivity into the town centre and through key public transport nodes, including the station and bus stops. The multi-storey car park has now kind of consolidated into a smaller footprint with the retention of Sienna Court, which sits on the eastern end of Broadway. Next slide, please. At the ground level, we've sought to retain as much active frontage as we can. We've focused a lot of the retail elements along those key strategic nodes on King Street, working its way up through Moffat Square and into the main central square as per the consent. A lot of the areas to the north of the building with the infill elements around the high street are going to be retained as the consented scheme, with some kind of consolidation of that retail provision towards that northern end of the site where there is the high street provision of retail. Broadway, we've looked to integrate some amenity spaces. A lot of the green connections up through that north-south link from Desborough into the square will have kind of a lot of spill-out spaces for retail units, gym spaces and the like. We'll be trying to ensure that a lot of those units are kind of publicly accessible as well, allowing that integration of public and private realm. Next slide, please. And here we've developed kind of a ground floor cutaway, showing our aspirations for what that master plan now looks like. Again, focusing on the activity around that ground floor, some of the landscaping treatments, the landscape architect later on will kind of cover off. But what we've sought to do is create a variety of spaces for a whole host of uses, providing spill-out spaces for the retail elements, whilst clearly defining where residential entrances are and those retail elements. Next one. I think here we'll hand over to Fatkin and Greg, who will talk you through some of the moves that they've made in the multi-storey car park. Thank you.
Good morning, all. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Cool, thank you. So since the first iteration of the scheme, the fundamental structure of the car park has required change, but this has enabled us to provide a better setting for disabled parking fundamentally. So the previous scheme was a VCM, which is a continuous spiral set of ramps. And the new scheme is a stacked split deck proposal. Now the next slide, please. So the provision within the MSCP at Nicholson Quarter is going to be providing spaces that are now going to be larger than the previous scheme. So this is a larger dynamic capacity space spaces set for the MSCP, which means the parking bays, even for non-disabled, will be larger, in line with the Institute of Structural Engineers recommendations from 2023. Along with that, the head clearance, i.e. how much space you have above your vehicle, is going to increase as well for both standard vehicles, so 2.2 metres, as was recommended in 2023 by the I-Struct-E guidance, and for disabled spaces, a 2.6 metre head clearance on the lower floors, as recommended by the I-Struct-E guidance also. Have the next slide, please. Oh, there we go. So this shows the previous scheme, which has a 2.4 metre bay with 1.2 metres access around all sides in the previous scheme. And the new proposals for the MSCP have a 2.6 metre wide bay, again with the 1.2 metres clear around the side. The head clearance is allowed for on 2.6 metres. For the lower deck levels, which is where the disabled spaces are located, and that's a height clearance of 2.6 metres, which conforms with both the iStruct E guidance and the BS 8300 guidance. Next slide, please.
You're fading a little, so if you could speak up, please.
Sorry. So we have the levels of the two lower levels of the car park up on screen now. The primary core is located at the northern end of the building, right, the top of the screen in this instance, and that's onto Brook Lane. So the secondary escape core is on the southern end, and that would exit ultimately onto Queens Lane and south onto Broadway. The disabled spaces as shown at the moment, which are all compliant with the BS 8300, are located on level 1, which is essentially half a level up from the entrance level. So it's about 1.5 meters higher than the route you drive in on.
We are still struggling to hear you.
Sorry, was that any clearer?
A little.
Just try and turn this on a bit. Apologies. Can you hear me now?
At all? No.
Can you hear me at all now? Sorry.
Yeah, you'll need to really speak up.
Okay, I'll yell at the computer. Sorry. So the primary core, as is shown in pink here, is where the main lifts are linking the disabled spaces and the rest of the building to Brook Street, where the northern entrance links into the MSCP. Can we have the next slide, please? Oh, yep, there we go. So also linked with the northern primary core is the changing places facility and the mobility shop mobility facility, which will be located on the northeast corner on the Queens Lane Brook Lane junction. These is directly accessible or adjacently accessible via the core, primary core to the north from the disabled spaces. The provision is for approximately 157 square meters of shop mobility, which will provide around 70 or 80 scooters on the shop floor at any one time. Next slide. I believe this is back to Carl on this one.
No, so this is means this is talking about the landscape now. No worries. Yeah, hopefully you can hear me a little clearer.
Yes, having a headphone and microphone is definitely helping here.
Good. So the first thing to highlight in terms of the public realm is that we've designed a scheme that has step-free access through all the key routes within the public realm. So the purple arrows show step-free access across all the routes. So as Carl mentioned, the new street coming in from Moffat Street, which connects to Descatty Way and also towards the station along King Street. And then Desborough Way in the south of the scheme, you can see the plan there. So we have a new bus stop proposed directly adjacent to Desborough Way. And then we have step-free access for a series of sort of short slopes bringing you up into the general level of the site along that route there. And then in the northern part of the site, as per the consented scheme, we have step-free access. There's a small element of ramping leading to Nicholson Lane in the northwest of the scheme, but that's really only to lead to a sort of back of house service area of the scheme. The other thing to mention is for all of these routes, we've looked to keep a consistent sort of wide, clear obstacle route for people to navigate easily, with no sort of sharp turns or strange elements sort of stopping clear navigation. So it's a really straightforward and easy scheme to move around and navigate. If we just go on to the next slide as well, please. And so in terms of materiality, we're proposing a consistent block paving in sort of a series of colours, just to talk you through our strategy here. For the main public spaces, we're proposing a mix of sort of quite neutral block pavers, which will be laid, they're laid easily and able to get a consistent surface across of those. And then to complement those to the edges of the scheme, adjacent to the buildings and to tie in with the facades, we're proposing a softer red paver. And to highlight key entrances, we're then using a slightly darker paver against those, so that key entrances will be sort of highlighted, and this will tie in with the facade treatment as well. So there's a strong strategy in terms of pedestrian navigation to find your way through the paving. In terms of just making sure that we've got drop curbs at all access points, including crossings between King Street and our site, and we've used proposing tactile paving, so corduroy paving at the top and the bottom of any steps or ramps, but as mentioned, there's only very limited situations where that occurs, and then blister paving to all crossing points as well. Yeah, and I think that sort of highlights the key elements that we're looking to implement within the public realm. As I say, it's broadly similar to what has been consented, and just making sure we've got a really easily navigable scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that all? Have we had everybody online who is talking about the Nicholson Quarter development? Has everyone now spoken?
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, that's great. I have a question about the multi-storey car park and who the client is for that. Is that RBWM who is the client for the multi-storey car park?
No, it was, and it no longer is. Now we are responsible for delivering that car park ourselves with our existing funder.
So the reduction in overall spaces within the car park from, I believe it was about 755 down to 456. That was an Orelli decision.
Yeah, I think there's a thing with the car park. There's been I guess there's a multitude of factors which has driven the car parking decision, which is based on environmental sustainability targets, planning policy, and the existing capacity within the town centre. So that's what's kind of what's driven it. I mean, Sienna Court's obviously now fallen out of that as well. So it's kind of, yes, it was Orelli, but it's been with the council as well. It's almost a joint. It's been a joint approach to that car park. I think that what we do recognise, it has been reduced, and that's some of the feedback we've had through from discussions with councillors and local residents through the exhibition and beyond. What we recognise is that it is smaller, and if once we've completed the project, if it is overwhelmingly busy, we do have the potential, because the council owns Timber Court still, we do have the potential to either extend the existing car park southwards, or building a standalone car park on the Sienna Court site if required in the future, and that's something that we'll keep reviewing.
Thank you. The reason for asking that was the reduction in public car parking spaces That's gone down from around 700 to 100, which is an enormous decrease in town centre parking.
Yeah, we're not finalised with the mix in the car park yet. So that 450, within the car park, there are a mix of spaces to serve the residents, spaces to serve the office buildings, and it's got existing requirements on site. Nicholson House, Brock House, and McDonald's have about 70 spaces to accommodate to. There is the potential to increase the 100 to 200. There is a flexibility for that. So that's what will be captured in our planning application. And as I said, we are surveying. We will have surveyed all the car parks in the town centre. So everything we're doing will be justified, and there'll be a demand assessment that sits behind. But yes, it has reduced. But we do have a potential solution to that if needed.
Well, the Broadway car park that was there, I think, was around 1,100 spaces, and within that there were 17 shop mobility spaces and 14 blue badge spaces, so 31. When the Disability and Inclusion Forum got involved in the car park redesigning the original planning application, because some very questionable design decisions had been made about where to site shop mobility and blue badge parking. There was, we thought, a really good solution that was achieved, and I believe that raised the total number of blue badge and shop mobility spaces actually to around 45. So in this iteration, we're now talking about 10 blue badge spaces between shop mobility and the general public with blue badge spaces. This will be the only off-street ground level blue badge parking in the town centre. I see Peter Haley would like to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. You've just hit on one of my major concerns, that the reduction in number, but also the parking was a bit of mix and match. Blue badge and shop mobility were thrown in together. That was my understanding from the community consultation event last month. And our experience is that just won't work. There'll be a competition, partly because of the smaller number, but partly because of the mixing. Blue badge holders are not the same as shop mobility users. They are two distinct groups. There is an overlap, but they are two distinct groups of people. And we're not there to oversee who gets parking spaces. So you're right, Chair, the number of spaces is, it feels too small to me, but also the fact that they're mixed and matched is also a big concern. Could I just also add that I did go to the consultation event last month. I think I spoke with you, Archie, at the event, and I did say there was a few design points around the office space as well that I was hoping to catch up with someone about. I didn't really understand who I needed to talk to, but I take it's one of you gentlemen that are on the call today. If we could catch up sometime to just discuss that before the planning application goes in, then that would be fantastic, please.
Yeah, Peter, more than happy to remain there all the time. It's more happy just to, if you're when you're in the unit, we can come and have a session in there, or we can meet anywhere really. But we'll come down with some plans and just work through it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Angela.
Yes, I attended the consultation as well, and I was shocked to see how small the car park had become, because you weren't using the Sienna Court area. At the consultation, there was no show or any board that area was going to become residential. That has just suddenly happened, has it?
Sorry, you broke up a tiny bit then. I missed the last.
I think Angela was asking around the reduction in the car parking size because of Sienna Court, and that had all a question about had that become residential.
What the make? Sorry, the sort of the makeup of the spaces within the car park.
It's the reduction in the car park size.
So I think I'll just jump in on that one. I think the question was what is happening to Sienna Court. So Sienna Court is retaining in the council's ownership as it's currently an office building with an office use, and that's what it will be staying as part of the application, as it's been excluded from the application boundary.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, Dom.
So 2, 3, 4 years ago, this forum proposed a number of changes to the previous iteration of the MSCP, including large lifts to accommodate electric buggies, automatic doors, to mention two. Are you aware of those, and are they retained in the latest iteration?
Yeah, look, I'll let Greg answer, but I think just on that general point, we did reflect all of your the feedback when we met. I don't think with me personally, but 2, 3, 4 years ago. So a lot of the principles we adopted there, we've transferred to this new proposal in terms of the things you just said. Also, the extra head of height on the ground level as well. So we have looked to maintain lots of those principles in the new proposal. But I think Greg just turned his audio on to speak as well.
Yes, we've had feedback, and those items that have been mentioned have been incorporated into the new design. It's required quite a lot of reframing of the car park in terms of structuring to accommodate larger landings and larger lift cores to enable larger lift cars, so that people on electric scooters, mobility scooters and the like may be able to use it freely.
Thank you. I can't see how a car park in the centre of Maidenhead town can only offer 100 parking spaces in total for the public and 10 parking spaces for blue badge holders and shop mobility. I would really hope the council will examine this during the kind of consideration of the planning application. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming along and your contribution. It's been enlightening, and we will ensure that we submit comments to the latest planning application. Yeah, so yeah, the forum does consider that there is not nearly enough off-street blue badge parking spaces, because these are imperative for wheelchair users, because it allows people level access out of and into their vehicles that you can't achieve if you're parking on street. So, as I say, thank you very much for coming along, and we will move on to the next item, which I think, Neil, is you talking about Maidenhead Town Centre parking.
Thank you.
Sorry, Neil, before you start, could I just add a comment as to what we've just been talking about? Obviously, whatever the design's going to be, that'll be lovely, I'm sure. But there's a gap between where we are now and that nirvana. Once the place is actually finished, they're going to start knocking the place down, knocking the Nicholson Centre down, and so on and so on. We were advised at the community consultation event it will take 3 years. So I'm just going to throw out, before you start, apologies for this, where does shop mobility go in those 3 years? What's going to happen to us? So, over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose the best place for me to start really is not with what's going to happen in the next 3 years, but what's happened since I was last here. And if I am completely honest, nothing has happened in relation to parking throughout the town centre since I was last here, except for the temporary car park on the old Nicholson's Broadway, which some people may be using and some people may not be using, depending on your thoughts of its suitability. As far as on-street parking is concerned, we did the survey it's probably at least 2 years ago, and we put in a number of additional bays in certain areas of the town, which helped. We are still struggling with the amount of abuse of those bays. It does surprise me that every day we are, issuing penalty charge notices to people who just decide that, it's a bay and they can use it. So we would like to improve that as much as we can. But as with most things, that is always proving extremely difficult because there is such a demand on the time of our CEOs and the wide area they have to cover throughout for the borough. But I'd like to see some sort of improvement on that, and we are currently considering what we can do in relation to that misuse. But not only that, but the misuse of blue badges themselves. We as an authority tend to take very little action against blue badge misuse, whereas a number of our neighbouring authorities do quite a lot. And as a lot of their badges are used in our borough, we assist them in those fraud cases where badges are being. So we're currently working to see how we can improve our system for that. As I say, there's been no additional bays added, and I'm unaware of any requests to add any additional bays in the on-street area. I am still aware of the concerns that have been raised previously about direct access to the footway from those bays. And I think there's probably only about 2, if my memory is correct, that have direct access. And my understanding is there's been no change in that. That would be a significant change to the highway and the footway, which potentially in the current climate is not something that the council can undertake. There is one area that I'm still a little bit concerned about, and that will be to the rear of the town hall on Park Street. Those of you who may be aware, there are 5 bays there. The road markings say disabled, the sign says limited waiting. And one of the things I would like to ask the forum is, in your opinion, whether those bays should be limited waiting, whether they should be blue badge holders, whether they should be a mixture of both. As it's very confusing to everybody who can park there at the moment. So I'd like to get that sorted out. And then on top of that, I have one other further question which directly relates to this forum, in that at this moment in time, there is no restriction on the length of time that you can remain in a non-street blue badge holders bays. Some of you may be aware there's a vehicle to the rear of this building that parks in the same blue badge holders bay all day, every single day, and never removes. At the moment, we have nothing within our traffic regulation orders to prevent that. And we would like the forum's opinion as to whether town centre on-street bays should be time restricted in the same way as a double or a single yellow line is. So perhaps a maximum stay, and those people who need to stay for longer should use the bays in the car parks, which remain unrestricted by time. So apart from no great updates, if I could get some opinions on those 2 things, then at least I'll be able to go away and we can sort something positive. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Neil, and thanks for coming along today. So the 2 questions were around the bays in Park Street. My own opinion is any bay that could be allocated as blue badge parking would be extremely welcome, because it's just so difficult. And on the town centre parking time restriction, I think that's fair to have a 3-hour parking limit. you know, people who live in the town centre and need to have a permanent blue badge space can apply for that. But predominantly parking in the town centre is for kind of short visits. Interestingly, I went through the Providence Place planning application over the last 24 hours in a lot of detail. And they did a parking beat survey of the two on-street blue badge parking bays by Sainsbury's. And looking at there, the blue badge parkers were predominantly kind of between an hour and 2 hours there. So there weren't people who were parking in those bays for a longer period of time. But, you know, I'm interested to hear any views from others, and we can also make sure that we follow this up kind of online with asking forum members and others within kind of local community groups with disabled people what their thoughts are on those two. So are there any other comments or thoughts from any other forum members? Yes, Don.
Well, rarely on the subject of parking, I'd offer some considerable congratulation to you for opening that large area. I now go into the town. For several years, if I had to come in, I was sort of started off in trepidation, not knowing whether I was going to be able to complete the trip, but now I can. So well done. It was turned around quite quickly, wasn't it, at the end of last year? So.
Yes, it was turned around very, very quickly. I think the council took potentially, you know, the best decision was to allow a third party to run that area, because obviously their ability to turn that round and get it operating very quickly was far greater than the council's, considering the processes we would have to go through. And obviously there would be a certain amount of difference between the surface that's in there now than the surface that would have been there if the council had done it. So in that respect, I think the decision taken by councillors at the time to do that is probably proving to be the correct, you know, decision for a lot of town centre users. It hasn't had a significant effect on other town centre parking, but if it's helped even one individual, then surely that's a good thing. And as opposed to it sitting there doing nothing, I suppose would be my answer. And then the only other thing, obviously, Chair, was what Peter said about the next 3 years. Unfortunately, Peter, as with a lot of these things, I actually don't know what the plans are for what's going to happen. Obviously, at some point with the redevelopment, that bit of, you know, new parking that we've got now will disappear as well. My understanding was originally that it would be done in phases, so certain bits could be maintained, and hopefully that will remain to be the case. But where anything else comes from in that period of time will have to be open to review, and whether that means that we have to revisit all of the on-street parking in Maidenhead to up the provision for blue badge holders and reduce limited waiting, and then push those people for limited waiting into the existing car parks, then that's something we'll have to do. Yeah, so if we are going to lose any spaces at all, then we need to look to reprovision them somewhere else, purely and simply because the last thing we want to do is reduce what there is now. We need to at least maintain that level going forward during this period of redevelopment. But then that needs to be based on the levels of people still coming into the town during that redevelopment as well.
Thank you. That actually reminds me, I last Thursday went down to the One Maidenhead development, which we will talk about, and I parked in the kind of the Broadway car park area. I've parked there several times now, and it is really helpful to be able to get directly into the Nicholson Centre and things like that. But I was actually exiting to go onto Broadway, and I videoed myself walking that route, and there are really quite a few hazards for people with disabilities, like trip hazards where there's kind of very uneven paving and a little curb, to an extremely steep camber actually coming out of the car park onto Broadway. And I almost went into the road just using my rollator, and you've got crossfall as well to try and deal with, and street furniture to try and kind of manoeuvre and get out onto Broadway and the pedestrian light. So I'm not going to share it now, but I thought it might actually be helpful for councillors and officers to actually kind of see what it's like as one person with mobility impairment. But Neil, you look like you're going to respond to those.
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy to take that up with colleagues and with Green Parking to see what can be done to improve access. I myself walked out that way the other day, and it wasn't even clear where I was supposed to be walking. I ended up walking in the roadway and then suddenly realised I was supposed to be behind the fence to go out the other way, but then the access out through that way is relatively narrow as well. So I will definitely get that raised for you, and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you. And also, if you're parking one of the sort of designated sort of blue badge areas, when you try and exit the car park, again, it's really unclear kind of how you're supposed to get out and manoeuvre around some kind of small bollards and things like that. So thank you. Any other kind of questions or comments for Neil? No? Thank you very much. So we'll follow up on the items that you raised. So thank you. I'd like to hand over now to Simon Arthur to talk about the website accessibility project. So welcome, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of slides that I can share. Can I share? Thank you. Come through, beautiful. Thank you very much. So I don't know why is it not advancing? Why is it always IT that have technical problems? There we go, that's better. So what I'm here to talk about this morning is the afternoon now, is the website of the council run. It was upgraded last year. I'm not saying renewed or refreshed, it was upgraded. The software driving it was upgraded for security and for resilience. And what I want to do now is I want to engage with community groups and residents to make sure that we are giving them the best opportunity to engage with the council through the website and making sure that it meets the requirements from an accessibility point of view. I'm not trying to adjust the content of the website. I'm looking at the functionality of the website to make sure that screen readers and people with visual impairments and that type of thing are catered for. So as a bit of a background, the council website is not just one website. There's lots of little component systems that build the overall entity that is the system. Some of those are managed systems that we engage with software partners for. So the delivery of the council tax system, the delivery of the online payments and that type of thing. Those are all areas that we need to invest in as well. So we need to make sure that all of the site, from searching for information right the way through to dealing with and engaging with the council, are catered for all users. Now, whether that, like I said, whether that is a visual impairment, whether that is a cognitive impairment, or whether that is a motor impairment, then we need to make sure that it's all done. The purpose of me coming here today is to actually engage with community groups, or find an avenue to engage with community groups and users with disabilities, so that we can actually make our website better for the residents. So like I'm going to reiterate again, I'm not talking about the information that is on there, it's how you access the information that is the important part to me. So making sure that, like I said, that the text is in a meaningful language, that it's using plain English and other areas like that. There are government guidelines for accessibility around the use of the website. They've been in force for a number of years. We are mandated to publish a accessibility statement on our website, as are all of our providers, which we have, and it should outline where we meet and where we fail with those accessibility, where we fail with accessibility through the website. We have a number of tools that we can use that are automated for testing keyboard navigation or color, contrast, and those types of visual impairments. These automated tools will only cater for about 30 to 35% of that assessment of accessibility. People that are experienced with using software like screen readers or braille readers or any other kind of assistive technology, they are the experts with that software. Those are the people that I would like to engage with to get feedback, so that we can make sure that, like I said, the website is catering for all residents and not just the able-bodied and the visual, the visually capable people. This also applies to things like the videos that we're seeing today, making sure that we have captioning and that type of function available for other users. So, like I said, the objective of coming here today was to raise awareness around the website, to show that we are committed to making the website better for residents, and to ask the forum, how and who should I be engaging with? What are the best routes to contact these people, or for them to contact myself? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Simon. That's, it's really helpful when we were discussing the council plan last year and talking about kind of updating or improvements to the website. First, the suggestion was that people with disabilities could then look at what had been produced and comment on that. But I was clear that actually exactly what your project is, it's about ensuring that the structure and all of the sort of behind the content on the website, as well as content on the website, but have been considered for the widest kind of possible kind of engagement from people with disabilities. In terms of avenues, I'm in contact with about 17 or 18 different community groups around disability. And you have groups here that I'm sure would promote this. So it would be perhaps good to sort of figure out what an engagement process looks like, so we can help kind of streamline it and contain it. And do you have any sort of deadlines or timescales for this process?
I suppose there's no time like the present. I mean, if the website is failing currently, then those areas need to be addressed sooner rather than later. But obviously, it's an iterative process. You can't just do the assessment this month and say it's going to be good forever. Content is constantly being reviewed. The software that is being used to host the website from all of these different providers is constantly being upgraded and updated. So we need to make sure that it is a recyclable process of engaging with these groups and parties. And like I say, we will do our best to then force these suppliers, the software, to make their product accessible.
Thank you. I don't know if we could hold a consultation about this. And Ellen, I'm sort of looking towards you, because I think while you want some free-form comment from people, to kind of ensure that there aren't kind of cracks where things fall through, or that there's kind of duplication, it might be helpful if people could comment on specific issues they have, but also about the functionality issues, etc. Across it. So I'm looking now at councillors and Ellen as Equalities and Community Engagement Officer, if that's something that could be taken forward. Ellen.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of, we tend to use kind of consultations for quite specific things where we've done this engagement already and we've got an idea of what, you know, proposals are on the table. So, but I think in terms of doing like a survey or us putting something together and using the engagement platform that we've got, that's absolutely something that we could do, especially if we've got an idea of particular groups that we could kind of target things. If you think that a survey-based kind of engagement would be useful, would get us, obviously that has the issue of being an online tool that might have its own accessibility issues. But if we did that maybe in combination with some kind of in-person sessions or something, we can definitely just have a look at the different ways that we can kind of engage groups on this.
Thank you. Yeah, I you know, take on board not calling it a consultation, but a structured engagement process, and I think publicising it through groups and also the library and things like that will enable those people who aren't currently using the website itself or online. Hopefully people will be able to engage through that. Councillor Price.
We've got the VCS, the Voluntary and Community Sector Partnership, which is, I don't know, maybe 80 or 90 groups that be worthwhile engaging with to get their views. They're meeting this Thursday. So I don't know through Ellen if that's something we can go direct to them and then they can disseminate accordingly.
Councillor Del Campo.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wanted to say it, you know, it feels like you're very much at the beginning of the project here and that you're engaging early. I've understood that correctly. I welcome that because, you know, so often we present things, you know, almost as a fait accompli, and then there's very little bandwidth to make changes. So I really welcome that you were engaging early. Just want to make sure that, you know, out of this meeting that we have clear sort of sense of what happens next. So, you know, obviously I welcome Ellen being involved. Jessel as well will probably have a lot of useful contacts. And I think, Ellen, you mentioned, you know, face-to-face as well. There's nothing better than that. So if there's any support I can give, please, you know, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mike, nobody online. Okay. Simon, thank you very much for coming along, and yeah, looking forward to kind of working to help improve things. Thank you. Next one is me. So it's a quick verbal update. So lifts at Maidenhead station, so they continue to be unreliable, even the new one. I also should say I touched base with Councillor Reynolds, aka Joshua Reynolds MP, who had a meeting I think last week with GWR. My contact was with Network Rail, and they told me that they are calling both the lift installer and the lift manufacturer of the new lift in to understand why these new lifts keep breaking down. And they are also looking at this longer term project of kind of how increased rainfall manifests itself in lift mechanisms and how they can mitigate that. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. Nobody is looking like they do. Moving on to item 12, which is 1 Maidenhead pedestrian accessibility. And Councillor Price, you actually have an update for us.
So part of my role is champion for corporate social responsibility, and Councillor Jack Douglas, whose ward this is, introduced me to 1 Maidenhead. So when I read about this issue, I spoke to Jack about it, and he spoke to 1 Maidenhead, and they have come back and said they're in regular dialogue with the contractor responsible. And the latest update is that the contractor has submitted a road space and traffic management request to Highways about the crossing work. And they've done that because this is on a public highway, and that it would take 1 day to do. So now it's in the borough's hands to actually approve this as quickly as possible, and then it can be done. So Councillor Jack Douglas is chasing that internally to try to get that speeded up. So my understanding, it's not putting in a planning application, it's putting in to get a licence to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Price. Yes, well, the Highways must have given a permit for the works on the highway, which removed the dropped curb. So I think there are questions as to why that was permitted in the first place. And it's good that hopefully the dropped curb, which is at the sort of the, I don't know, I can't think of the orientation of it now, but the end of the 1 Maidenhead development by, I think it's called the Corner House pub at the bottom of Queen Street. But there still remains the issue of the lack of dropped curbs around the rest of the development. At the moment, the only places where there is tactile paving and level kind of flush access is up by the Odeon Cinema and at the other end of King Street by kind of crossing over to O'Neill's pub. So the rest of that development has no places for anyone to safely cross the road if they have a buggy or any reason to need dropped curbs, such as people who use guide dogs. And again, it sort of calls into question the scrutiny of planning applications for town centre developments to ensure that they do meet the needs of disabled residents here. So I think it's good news, but also I think there's still work to do, and that there are questions for both the developer and the council to answer on that. So Councillor Price.
So what I'll do is I'll feed back the wider concerns, because I just asked him about the specific one, to him because it is his ward, and then see how that goes forward. But just generally on that general point you've made about developments taking place and not sufficient oversight of the impact on residents with disabilities. Yes, the planning department should consider it, but as an overview, what I think I could suggest, and I'll see what Councillor De Campo has as an idea, is every week all councillors get a list of all planning applications in their ward, which I go through and I look at, and anything that I think, oh, that's interesting, I will look at in detail. And if we actually asked all the councillors to look at planning applications, the non-residential ones, with a view to how is it impacting on people with disabilities, then that would be another check and an overview to make sure nothing slips through the net. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, I do think that's a good idea, and I think there's this could be taken up with the lead member for planning as well. You know, just to make sure those checks are in place at the planning stage. Can I carry on? Can I, with my what I wanted to say about this? I don't believe that permission was given to take out those drop curbs. I've got an email in front of me. Okay. It says the council disagrees with the developer's decision to remove the crossing as part of their development works, and the developer will need to re-provide a crossing point at this location. I'm advised that the council is not able to insist on a timescale with the developer for this to be rectified, but we are withholding the developer's certificate of substantial completion for their highway works until the crossing is reinstated. So it looks like you've got a different view on the history of it.
Well, I wasn't there. So, and I don't have access to, I mean, I could put in a freedom of information request to see, but my understanding is that no works are permitted on the highway unless an application is made and permission granted on it. And I can't imagine that the contractor just showed up and took out the dropped curb without highways and transport being aware of it. And thank you for that statement, but that statement, I think, goes back to some point last summer.
It does, yeah. It's
So,
been a very long time.
you know, the fact that it's great that the developer has, through their CSR contact, decided that actually at this point they will reinstate that curb. But, you know, it's taken 11 months and having to traipse into the town centre last week because thankfully the Maidenhead Advertiser were interested in this as a story. And, you know, I want to really offer my thanks to a Windsor resident, Tim Clare, who is a power chair user who came over and didn't have his own vehicle, so actually had to persuade a friend to drive him over to show that you would have to go down that curb backwards in a power chair across a road where people could be kind of coming towards you or turning off, and it's just a horrible situation. And yeah, I failed to understand why the developer decided it was going to take so long to actually rectify this as a situation. So thank you. Oh, actually, sorry, I knew I had another point, which nearly went out of my head. So when a large planning application is put in, there is a document called a Design and Access Statement. And that access statement is supposed to consider the access to the building and in the building for all its users. So that includes people with disabilities. However, there are still, I'd say, a majority of built environment professionals that don't understand that, and they treat the access part of it as vehicle access to the development. And I know with the Providence Place one, the amount of design that goes into it with lovely trees and flowers, and obviously as a director of private plant nursery, it's great, but there was really nothing about how disabled residents would be able to get into that development and around it. And I think it was the same with the One Maidenhead development. So I think planning, ensuring that the access statement actually does duly consider the needs of all people, including those with disabilities, that is the place to start. And a planning application should not be able to progress if the design and access statement hasn't clearly done that.
Can I come back? Yeah, thanks. I think that's a really good point, and I'm happy to take an action to take that up with the lead member for planning and the head of planning. Thanks.
Okay. Providence Place planning application. So do we still have Tony?
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, Velocity are acting on behalf of Durno Estates Limited. We've recently submitted a plan application for a development proposal that comprises the demolition of the existing 4-storey office building known as Sierra House and it's kind of a comprehensive redevelopment to provide a new Part 5, Part 8-storey office building, including a realignment of St Mary's Walk, landscaping, improvements to public realm, cycle parking, and ancillary development. So the plan application was submitted last April. Velocity prepared a transport assessment, framework travel plan, construction logistics plan, and delivery and service plan in support of that application. And a key aspect of the scheme is the reintroduction of a loading bay along Providence Place, which will involve the removal of 2 disabled parking spaces, which are located off the eastern side of Providence Place. To inform the transport assessment, we kind of undertook a quite comprehensive parking beat survey, which assessed the use of existing on and off street disabled parking spaces within the vicinity of the site. The results of those survey kind of demonstrated that there was significant residual spare capacity to accommodate the displaced demand from both the reintroduction of the loading bay off Providence Place, as well as that associated with future end users of the commercial office development. One of the key reasons for introducing the loading bay is that it would alleviate the potential for kind of delivery servicing vehicles causing obstructions and prejudicing the free flow of movements along Providence Place, which is quite common. And it would also obviously enhance kind of highway safety for end users. So the reintroduction of the loading bay would overall have a quite positive impact on the local highway network with regards to safety and capacity. Following the submission of the application, we were advised by the Highways Officer, Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead, to consult with the Disability and Inclusion Forum. So that's the purpose of my intro today, is really to seek the views of the Disability and Inclusion Forum, so we can feed that back into the plan application process. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, after seeing this planning application for the first time yesterday and spending many hours yesterday and this morning go through the application, yeah, I did note, I think it was last summer, that Highways advised the applicant to contact the Disability and Inclusion Forum, and the applicant rebutted it, saying it should be down to the council, and that the Disability and Inclusion Forum hadn't submitted any objections during the to the planning application that was made. As we've just discussed really with the previous item, unless the Disability and Inclusion Forum are notified that there is an application that's going in that will have a potentially material impact on residents and visitors with disabilities, we don't know about them. So when I went through this, as I say, yesterday and this morning, what my comments are. So looking at the need to, or in the application, the proposed need to remove the blue badge parking bays and reintroduce a loading bay, I looked at the delivery and servicing plan, and on that I could see that there was forecast to be 11 vehicles per day delivering to the surrounding offices. The peak time is between midday and 1 o'clock, when 3 vehicles are forecast. So that's not a lot of kind of usage. And when I went through the parking beat survey results, there were 115 vehicles observed using the 2 blue badge parking spaces over the 2 days, and that was a recording time of 22.5 hours. 3 of those vehicles were delivery vehicles abusing the space, but they were using it. And those 3 vehicles occupied the spaces for a total of 16 minutes out of 22 hours and 30 minutes. 59 of the vehicles were recorded as being for pickup or drop-offs. And I suggest, because of the briefness of the stay, another 14 that were recorded as parking were likely to be pick up and drop offs, perhaps where the vehicle left, the driver left the vehicle to assist the passenger. In total, this suggests that 2/3 of vehicles were either picking up or dropping off passengers. The need for this will not be met by the suggested alternative of parking in Hines Meadow. And just because the majority of vehicles didn't display blue badges whilst picking up or dropping off, it doesn't mean that they weren't collecting or dropping off passengers with disabilities. I've seen in other comments people talking about taxis going there to pick up residents from nearby locations who are disabled. And what also wasn't recorded was the time that one vehicle was occupying both spaces. And from a personal experience, that is often an obstacle to parking there, because it's quite an awkward space to try and get into. And if people don't park really to the front or really to the back, you can't get a second vehicle in there. So I don't think the occupation of those spaces was actually accurately captured. Furthermore, looking at the 3 parking spaces at Market Street, the parking beat results showed very high usage of these spaces, and it suggests that because they are close to town centre amenities, but so are the bays in Providence Place. I looked at the walking distances from various town centre locations to Boots the Chemist, which is a frequently used place, particularly by residents with disabilities. Excuse me. In Market Street, there are 3 spaces there, and that's a 25-metre walk or wheel to Boots the Chemist. Providence Place, it's about 125 metres. Hines Meadow, it's around 300 metres. And Broadway Car Park, it's also about 300 metres. And the distance from Hines Meadow blue badge spaces to the proposed development is 200 metres. And why that's important is the applicant responded to the council that they didn't need to provide the recommended 1 or 2 blue badge spaces as part of the development, because people had, there was capacity in the Hines Meadow car park. And that leads me nicely onto the Hines Meadow car park. So the height restriction there is 1.9 metres, so it's not tall enough for some vehicles used by blue badge holders, particularly people who have wheelchair boxes on top of the vehicles. The blue badge parking there is on the 3rd and the 4th floors. The lifts are extremely prone to breakdowns, and those breakdowns can go on for weeks. The 4th floor parking is only accessible by lift, and the 3rd floor can be accessed by an inclined travelator, but this can't be used by many people with disabilities. And I have been present where I've tried to use Hines Meadow car park and found out that both the travelators and the lifts have been out of action at the same time. So I really don't consider that Hines Meadow is a suitable alternative place for those displaced blue badge spaces. Looking at the wider development, there were also some additional concerns that I had, that the steps by one of the buildings abuts the footway on Providence Place, where it's already narrow, and I worry about people falling there. I'm worried about the gradients of one of the ramps, and Active Travel England referred to this, but the client has rebutted that. The lack of blue badge spaces for building occupants, I've already referred to that. The exterior lighting and street furniture, which is more focused on aesthetics than utility for pedestrians, and particularly for people with disabilities. I can't see that there was consideration given to lighting for visually or cognitively impaired people. The resting places on St Mary's Walk would be worrying to walk or wheel past from a fear of crime or antisocial behaviour perspective for vulnerable people, particularly at night time. And there is an inclined wheelchair stair lift that is proposed, but there is no detail being provided on that, despite the council asking for it. And as we'll come on to talk about in an AOB, where there was a platform lift that has been broken for months, trying to find out who's responsible for its maintenance, how vandalism will be prevented, and what happens during breakdowns is a major concern. And then last in my comment on this is really to ask a question, which is, why didn't the planning officer's pre-application advice mention the removal of 2 blue badge spaces in a town centre setting? So that's obviously not a question for the applicant. This is a question for the council, that again, this is something which will impact negatively on people with disabilities, but was not considered, or certainly was not explicitly mentioned in the pre-application advice. So they were all just my top line comments. I'll make sure that I collect other people's thoughts on this, including wider disability community groups that are out there. Does anyone else have any questions? Angela?
I haven't visited Providence Place just recently, and I can't quite picture it totally, but would there be space there to move the 2 present blue badge spaces elsewhere along there?
No, Angela. It's very tight for space there, but that gives people again easy access to both Sainsbury's, but also into the town centre, because the spaces at Market Street are very welcome, but from about 5 o'clock in the evening, they are abused by food delivery cars. I myself have got into discussions with some people who are clearly waiting for their call from Deliveroo or Uber or whoever to go and pick up deliveries and take them to customers. So, you know, those spaces, not only are they heavily used, but they're also heavily abused. Tony, I don't know if there are any comments you'd like to make at this stage, or
Yeah, thank you very much for the comments. Certainly please pass those on to myself, and I can feed those back to the wider project team, and we could provide a thorough response to them. Just on the question about Providence Place, it is a kind of a one-way section of highway, so it's got quite a narrow carriageway, and the footways on either side are quite narrow as well. So there's kind of limited opportunity to provide 2 disabled ways somewhere else along that section of highway. But yeah, certainly welcome your comments, and I'll certainly make sure they're passed on to the wider team so we can provide a response. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I know Councillor Del Campo has something she would like to say, but also when we talk about vehicles going down Providence Place, the key reasons would be for people to access those 2 blue badge spaces at Providence Place, or the 3 blue badge spaces at Market Street. As we've said, there have been some delivery vehicles that use it, but there's not a lot else that people would be doing in Providence Place. But I'll hand over now to Councillor Del Campo.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I suppose my concern is that, you know, obviously you've already spent quite a lot of time on this, and you're proposing to spend more time on it, you know, collating and putting together a response. But, you know, because we are past the deadline for comments, will that response carry any formal weight? You don't know. Okay. Given that I've already taken an action to write to the lead member for planning and the head of planning on me as well, add this in as well, just to make sure that, you know, it can be given due consideration if there's a mechanism for your comments to be received and given weight in the decision. You know, I just hope it's not just a tick box exercise.
I think I think despite the fact I only saw it yesterday, I think looking through it, the facts that I have presented, if they are not given any weight, then I would submit a complaint to the council that it has failed in its duty to ensure that the needs of all residents are considered with any development, and that, you know, we haven't had the opportunity to comment on this before. But I think, oh, sorry, Neil.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I just wanted to point out that I think it's very important for this forum that those two bays were only changed a few years ago on the request of this forum in the first place. So they were part of that round of stuff that we did, you know, during or just after COVID and things like that. So to actually, you know, remove them that shortly afterwards, and they are heavily utilised. So I think it would be detrimental.
Yeah, they were to try and add back some of the spaces that have been lost in the various redevelopments around St Ives Road and other town centre locations. But I think Councillor Price.
Yes, it's just in the transport assessment on 3.5.1, it's talking about the nearby disabled parking provision and saying that this is within the 50 metres that is deemed to be acceptable for residents who have a walking stick or cane users. And I would say that's a very narrow definition of our residents with disabilities. So how have they considered residents who have more severe disabilities and are more than a cane user?
Well, also, I have no idea where they're measuring to and from in that 50 metres to say there's alternative provision, because third and fourth floor of Hines Meadow isn't 50 metres away. But I'm really conscious of time, and there are a couple of AOBs. So if people don't mind, I'm going to press on. So Tony, thank you very much for coming along today. So first AOB that I have is a report back, actually. So there is a platform lift as part of the sort of redevelopment of Chapel Arches. There was a ramp from the car park exit to the back of Chapel Arches shop that's kind of on the Greenway. And as part of the development, the ramp was replaced by steps, and there is a platform lift for pedestrians who are unable to use the stairs. I was contacted by a resident, Anne Darracott, who is also a trustee of Maidenhead Civic Society. She flagged to me and others that the lift had been broken for some time, but it was unclear who to notify to achieve remedial action. So I suggested to Anne that she use the report it function on the RBWM website under report a problem with the pavement. I also recalled from the planning application that Shanley Homes were responsible for maintaining the lift. So Anne did this, and the response to her report it was that an inspector had visited the site to assess the situation and advised that the issue you have reported is not at a level where we would take action at the moment. This location will, however, continue to be regularly monitored as per our highway maintenance management programme. Should the situation deteriorate in the meantime, please do not hesitate to report it again. So this raises the questions: how was the situation assessed? What is the level at which highways would take action? Why could they not just have contacted Shanley Homes and required them to get the lift back into operation? And when they talk about should the situation deteriorate, how could it have deteriorated any further? People who needed to use the lift were unable to use the lift. So Anne Darracott had a contact at Shanley Homes. He confirmed that their management company, HML, were responsible for the lift maintenance. Anne then called and emailed HML, following through until the lift was working again. She's also suggested that operating instructions and contact details are affixed to the lifts. So pedestrian matters, and particularly for people with disabilities, seem to kind of just not be, well, I think they're a distant third place in the highways department behind cyclists and motor vehicles. So it just feels very frustrating at the moment that the built environment seems to be getting worse rather than better for people with disabilities. Lizzie.
I just want to say I really agreed with that a lot of the time when I travel with my mum to shop mobility in Windsor usually now, she finds herself unable to go there. She hasn't been there for a few months because the lift, although there was works being done there, that takes you from, I don't know what it's called, but it takes you from the ground to the railway station into Windsor Centre, is repeatedly broken even after the works. And we never know if it's working or if it's not before we go. So she's pretty much given up on both town centres. And it's a real shame because I think both towns are lovely and could really use having more people coming there and having this lift out of action so repeatedly. And in fact, both lifts, because there's one a bit further up, are regularly out of service. And so I just wanted to agree with what you're saying about the built environment, really.
Thank you very much for that, Lizzie. Yes, Neil.
Thank you. Are you able to sort of give me a bit of a better idea which lift you're talking about? Are you talking about the lift that's actually within the coach park or the lift that's in the multi-storey car park around the corner underneath the bridge?
I'm talking about the one with the steps that go round it up by the brewery in Rabble, and the other one is just there and the coach
Where you
park.
have to walk across the green walkway across by the arches, yeah. So obviously that is a council. That's a council lift. That lift was fully refurbished last year at large expense. Unfortunately, it does suffer from huge amounts of vandalism. We sort of have a minority of people who get in there. They like to try and mess about with the maximum weight limit. So they get in, they jump about, they take it off. And so we are constantly trying to keep that lift in operation. There is also the lift that's round in Windsor Dials car park, which is just through Alma Road, which goes up onto the Windsor Royal shopping side, but also the alternative lift, which you have to go across the road towards the town centre and go up by the travel lodge. So that we try and make sure at least one of those lifts is always working, but as I say, it's not as easy as it possibly could be.
Thank you. So I have one more AOB, which I have shared with a couple of people. So at some point this year, I am going to be moving, and I'm going to be moving about 90 miles further west to Bristol. So while I will be continuing, I hope, with some of my voluntary work, it would seem both unfeasible but ridiculous for me to continue to be a forum member and particularly the chair of the Disability and Inclusion Forum. So Maidenhead has been my home for 18 years and I've loved it, but it's not my hometown and my nearest relatives are 90 miles away. And in thinking about where I want to live long term and what I want to do with my time long term, a move to Bristol is on the cards. So I really hope that one of our current forum members or maybe new members joining the forum will get involved and will step up. As you know, Angela has been with the forum a lot longer than me, and while she is happy to remain as a member, I think we both feel that other people should take up the mantle as chair and vice chair from now on. So I anticipate I will be here for the June forum because my house hasn't yet gone onto the market, but it will do imminently. The September one kind of less likely. So that was something I'd like to share. So Angela.
I think you'll all agree that this has come as a great shock. It came as a great shock to myself, and you know, we have nothing but thanks for Lisa for her dedication and her amazing points of detail that she goes into on behalf of this forum. She will be a great loss, a great loss. But I must. If no one steps up to the mark and no one takes on as vice chair or chair, this forum will dissolve. So it is an appeal for members of the forum to come forward. I was chair for over 10 years and Lisa joined me and raised the level of this forum so well. And whoever takes over will, you know, be comforted from the fact that the Disability and Inclusion Forum does make a difference. And we implore you all to think about it and come back with an answer, please, by June. Otherwise, the future looks very bleak, okay? I cannot stress that enough. I will no longer be vice chair. Lisa will no longer be chair. End of story. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. That was a bit draconian, but yeah. But as I say, if other members have contacts who they think might be interested in joining, as I say, I'm in contact with the Macular Degeneration Group and Berkshire Vision because I think getting representation directly from people with visual impairment is really key. Don.
Well, firstly, I second Angela's laudation of you. Lisa, you've done an absolutely amazing job. Yeah, as Angela said, the level of detail that you go into is incredible. I would just say that from my 8 years of participation with the MS group, it is very difficult to get volunteers. And we ought to advertise this publicly as soon as possible and not just trust word of mouth to come up with an answer.
Yes, I agree, and so I would ask all forum members, both as we're called service users and others within the group, to try and publicise the fact that we are looking for members, and yeah, really for existing members to think about whether they can step up, because it would be such a shame. And as I think we saw from our agenda today, there are lots of things that impact people that unless we get involved and make a fuss about, they get missed or ignored. So are there any other AOBs? Oh, three. Catherine, I saw your hand first.
It's fine. I'm okay with first names. Yeah, just echo everyone's thanks. You are a strong campaigner both inside and outside of the forum, and you keep us all on our toes. And as Angela says, that you are going to leave a big gap there. So thank you so much. I would say that I don't know whether Ellen, Mikey, whether we can take this up with comms and ask them to do some comms around it, both for new members and for for people to step up to those positions. I have any other business, but I don't know whether yours is on this subject or.
I don't do it.
No, okay. If that's okay, then I just wanted to suggest that we ask online speakers to use a headset. I think it's probably good practice for any meeting, but particularly a meeting where you're going to have people with hearing issues. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you very much, Lisa. And actually that point as well, most of that presentation I couldn't keep up with, couldn't understand what was being said. My point is to go back to my previous point about what are we going to do about the gap from when the Nicholson Centre is knocked down to when the Phoenix arises. I've raised it a couple of times in different fora, and everyone nods, well, yes, that's really serious. Could this forum formally ask the property company, for example, for a response? I appreciate it's going to take money to do whatever it is that can be done, but I don't see any progress being made on anything at all. I appreciate Neil's got very limited capacity, but the council's got very limited capacity. So I understand all of that, but if we don't take some decisions and try and move forwards in some way, we'll go a couple of years forwards. Nicholson Centre is going to be knocked down, and we're going to be stuck. We're back in a similar situation that we had before. Is that we won't have a Nicholson Centre that we can fall back on. So what are we going to do? So I don't know if the property companies are best people to ask, or whether it's some other planning. I don't know. But somewhere along the line, there must be somebody who can take this and move it forwards as to what to do with the shop mobility service in the period when the shopping centre is knocked down. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Del Campo.
Thank you. I would suggest that probably the best person would be Andrew Durrant, because he looks after property and planning. But copying the leader of the council as well, because, you know, I know it's an issue that's important to him as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Dom.
In the interest of time, very quickly, there is still no register at the front desk as to who's in the building, particularly in terms of visitors. So I was given the email address of the facilities supervisor. So if you like, I can pursue this issue and sort it out by the next meeting.
That would be really helpful, Dom. Thanks for the offer. Victoria.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Lisa. I just wanted to let everybody know that we're holding an event for people with profound and multiple learning disabilities at our Boyne Grove Centre on the 24th of April, and primarily it's to promote the services and support that's available for people with very high complex needs, whether that's a learning disability and additional physical disability and sensory impairment. So we're hoping to engage with young families, but people that are leaving school in transition, to show what's available in the community for people with higher support needs. So we'd welcome anybody who would like to pop along as well to say what other services could be around. So Peter, I'm looking directly at you for one. And we're going to be looking at our health partners as well from CTPLD, but I just wanted to promote that. And I will be contacting RBWM comms to let everybody know as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. Is there a kind of a flyer and any sort of materials? Because obviously we can, you know, promote that.
Yes, there will be. We're just in the final draft and we'll send it through. So if I can send it to Mikey to send it out to the wider mailing list, that would be brilliant. Thank you for your support.
Brilliant. Does anybody else have any AOB? Okay, Michael, what's the time? Please. So at 1:19, I'm closing the meeting, and our next meeting is, do we have that yet, or is that after the?
June.
9th of June. So thank you very much, everyone.
Is there no December?